And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wangs in Culver City.
John, in a sit-down interview with the LA in a Minute guy, Evan Lovett, Karen Bass admits the obvious about homelessness.
But what we have been doing, it does cost a lot of money. But everything that you pointed out, how much money does it cost to leave people on the street? You know, there's parts of our city that the majority of the fires are because of homelessness.
Correct.
Whoa, that's the quiet part you just said out loud, lady.
Yet you know that's the case, and you still leave thousands and thousands and thousands to start fires every single day.
And we still don't know what the cause was of the Palisades fire.
Or the 10 freeway.
Come to think of it, do we ever figure out how these fires start?
Usually no. Except for the Eden fire, now it has to be SoCal Edison, because you see what they're doing? They're offering all the Eden fire victims cash payments if they promise not to sue. Don't do it. Sue their pants off. I know they're going to pass it on to the ratepayers, but I don't care. Sue them.
Sounds like real innocent behavior to me. All right. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the host of the Evil Thoughts podcast, which you can download wherever you download your favorite podcasts. You can get him online at joecrummey.com and follow him on X at Joe Crummey. Joe Crummey, welcome.
Thank you, John. You know, I heard you guys talking about the homeless thing. You know, I see it as a resident of L.A. every day. And you guys are right on the money. You're right over the target. You know, it's kind of like, you're homeless, and I'm going to ask you to actually do something, but you're going to tell me no, and then I'm just going to go, okay, that's fine. They just allow it. It's weird. They just allow it. We don't have to allow this if we don't want to, but the bottom line is they just allow it. I mean, that's it. They just allow it.
If you tolerate something, you're going to get more of it, and I'll tell you, you can go to Miami, you can go to Dallas, you can go to Atlanta, you can go to any big city in the country, and it's not like this. For whatever reason, the homeless problem is a Pacific Coast problem. It's Seattle, it's Portland, it's San Francisco, it's Oakland, it's Los Angeles, it's San Diego. Those cities are doing things that are very wrong.
Yeah, they're allowing it. I mean, that's, it's funny because if you listen to, the homeless industrial complex, I mean, Karen Bass can't buy seedy hotels fast enough. I mean, that's not the problem. When they talk about a lack of housing or even affordable housing, that's not really the problem. The problem is the people. The problem is the people aren't ready for housing. They can't deal with it, and maybe they need our help as a society. I understand that. But, I remember during the fires, right on Ventura Boulevard, there's a space, they call it the Oasis. It's right in Studio City. And there were a bunch of people that were living up there, and they were starting fires because it was cold out. It was January. And everybody was freaking out. You remember the fires? Because we had a couple in Studio City, and people were really freaking out. It was like, now my number's up now. And people went up to, these people that were living in the hills, right under all these houses, hundreds of houses in the hills. And they said to them, and the city even said this, well, we went up to them and we said, please don't start any more fires. And then they turned, and we offered them housing, but they declined. They said, and I said, well, what do you mean? Did they decline? You should have said you're going to get arrested. These people that make crazy decisions, they're very poor decisions. They want to live in the hills and start fires and stuff, and God knows what drugs or mental state they're in. They allowed it. And everybody else that lived in the hills just had to suck it up. I mean, it's insane.
Well, they caught the guy that tried to light Runyon Canyon on fire, and thankfully there was a football player who was there, a large man, who was able to keep the guy there, hold him, for the cops to show up and pick him up. And what did we find out? Oh, yeah, the guy has a screw loose, and he has a rap sheet a mile long. Everything you would expect.
Right. And, I don't understand. I mean, I live and work in L.A. I drive through the canyon 3 or 4 times a week. I'm in Hollywood. I'm on the other side on Ventura Boulevard. I see it all. I see what's happened to Hollywood. I see what's happened to Sunset Boulevard. I see what's happening along Ventura Boulevard in Studio City. I wouldn't walk there at night now in a million years. I wouldn't do that in a million years. And it's because we tolerate it. And it's really sad. We don't have to live like this. But I suppose, there's a whole homeless industrial complex. And it reminds me, of the way we talk about immigrants. I know I'm changing the subject now, but I mean, it's sometimes I think it's like a genetic problem with these people. If you listen to Alex Padilla or even, Karen Bass, they can't quite say illegal immigrants. They just can't quite grasp that. And we can get into that in a minute if you want to, but just can't quite figure out the difference between the two. It's really important they conflate the two. They'll die on that hill all day long. And the same thing with homeless. They just don't want to admit what the real problem is. And if you won't admit what the real problem is, you're never going to solve it. And that's why it keeps going. And now they're $1 billion upside down in the city budget. And they want to raise my sanitation fees now. That's a funny story, too. But I mean, they just won't admit what the real problem is. That's why it never gets fixed.
Well, whenever they opine on immigration, it reminds me of the old Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court, Rose Byrd, who was morally opposed to the death penalty. And what she would do whenever a death penalty case would come before her is she would start with the premise that the death penalty is immoral and illegal, and then work her way backwards, and then find something that proved that to be true that was part of that particular case, and then she would overturn every single death penalty conviction that went in front of her. And I think if you push them far enough, whether it's Alex Padilla or Karen Bass or whomever, and you ask them what we should do with illegal aliens, the answer is they don't want to deport anyone. They do not believe that being in the country illegally is an offense that should result in deportation. Well, if that's the premise that you start from, you just go ahead and work your way back and you find excuses to keep them all here. And that's basically where they are.
Well, yeah, you are exactly. What's funny about it is the new standard is, and you get this from Alex Padilla or Karen Bass too, as you say, whoever. If you haven't killed anybody, what's the problem? I mean, that's really what the new standard is. All right, you're here illegally, yeah, whatever. We've been ignoring that law for so long. It feels weird, that somebody's actually enforcing it now. We can't have any of that. But it's the new standard is, well, you haven't been a violent felon. You haven't killed grandma. You haven't run over anybody in the car or whatever it is. So it's all good. I mean, that's the new standard. That's where they're going.
But what's crazy is apply that logic to anything else. Imagine if you're owning and operating Disneyland and someone sneaks in without a ticket, and then at a certain point you figure out they're there without a ticket, and they go, well, I haven't gone on Space Mountain yet, so let me go on Space Mountain, and let me do a couple others, and then we'll talk. That's not how it works. Your ass is going to be on Catella, lickety-split.
Yeah, exactly. Then I read today, at least I saw the headline at the L.A. Times. It's behind a paywall, and I'm certainly not going to give them a nickel. But, I read today the Catholic Church is now going to be giving, once again, immigrants around there. They do the same. Because, the L.A. Times has the same disease that Karen Bass and Alex Padilla have. I think it's genetic. And that migrants now that are afraid to come outside, the Catholic Church of Los Angeles is going to be bringing them food and medicine. And, again, it's kind of like, what kind of they really like this sort of two-tiered system of this caste system, that some people are here legally, and a lot of you, obviously more probably than we're willing to admit, are not here legally. And now you can kind of live and work as our second-class citizens and pick the cotton for us, and that's fine. Just don't kill anybody, and we'll look the other way. And by the way, here's some free food, but you can't leave your house. It's like, why be here if you can't leave your house? I mean, how much fun can that be?
Well, I mean, that's basically the point that Hunter Biden made when he was doing his rounds on the podcast this week, where he said, you can't get rid of these people because then who's going to pick the crops? Who's going to clean your hotel rooms? Who's going to perform all of these tasks that Americans don't want to do in between all the swearing? And by the way, I want to talk to you about that because I have been around some prolific swearers in my life. I don't believe I've seen anyone use that kind of machine gun fire with F-bombs in a very long time than what I saw with Hunter Biden in that podcast. Do you, when you saw that, do you get the idea that he's just a guy who swears all the time and that's just part of his character? Or do you get the impression that this is a nervous drug addict who has fried his brains on drugs and that's just what comes out?
Man, talk about teeing me up there, pal. Well, I don't know. I thought it was weird because if you listen to his voice, you can tell that you can hear Joe Biden's voice in there. As a voice guy, the radio guy, we know voices, and you can hear his father's inflection. You can hear it in his voice. The F-bombs, I don't know. But I do think it was really interesting what he was saying is, hey, who's going to pick our cotton? We've got this second-class citizen. Who's going to pick our cotton for us because we're not going to do it. And even Governor Newsom basically said the same thing last week. Who's going to do all this work that you and I aren't going to do? Wink, wink, wink. And so they have a second tier, a caste system, of people that are really not supposed to be here, and will let you live in the shadows, and that's okay, and do the jobs nobody wants to do, because you'll do that because we're not going to really recognize you as real citizens anyway. So we have leverage over you. I mean, it's weird how they use these people and then turn around and claim they're the compassionate ones.
Let's go back to Hunter for a second, because one of the things that he tipped us off to was that they have not buried the hatchet. When I say they, I mean the Bidens, with Nancy Pelosi and her family over what happened during the last election. He even went after Nancy Pelosi's daughter in very vulgar terms as well. Do you think those two will ever make up, or do you think it's going to be a Sicilian thing until they die?
I think the latter is the case. And by the way, I didn't see that part. And also, let me ask you this, because I didn't see the whole thing. So I'm literally asking you this question. Did Hunter happen to mention the Obamas? Because they were right in the middle of that. And my understanding is he did not.
I got the impression, and the Obamas did come up from time to time in those interviews, that the relationship is still frosty between the Bidens and the Obamas.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because
he went after Podcast America.
Yep. Yeah, because, the Obamas were right in the middle of that. I know he went after George Clooney, right? He said something about George. He had no problem calling him out. But I think he softened his criticism or avoided the Obamas. But I'm sure they're just as mad. I'm not sure they want to go there. I'm not sure that they want a public fight and a feud with the Obamas. They'll fight with Pelosi, and I think they'll fight with George Clooney, of course. But I don't think they want to do that with Obama right now. And I don't think he did.
I kind of get the impression that the Bidens are one of these families who have the idea that the entire world is out to get them. They're almost conspiratorial about it, where the Pelosi's are out to get them, the Obamas are out to get them, the media's out to get them, the Republicans are out to get them. Everyone's out to get them, and they're the only ones standing up for truth, justice, and the American way.
Yeah, maybe they're right. Except the last part about truth, justice, and the American way. And maybe they're not quite right about that part. But the other part, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. I mean, I don't even know how Joe got elected anyway. I mean, I don't even get it. I mean, that was the worst campaign I ever heard. I ever saw. The worst one I ever saw. And what, 85 million votes? I mean, I still don't get it. And I'm not trying to be conspiratorial. I mean, I just don't understand it. Do you?
Well, I think at that point he had lost, 3 in a row? If you go back to 2022, he lost in Iowa to Pete Buttigieg. He lost in New Hampshire to Bernie. And then I think he lost Nevada to Bernie as well. So Bernie had 2 wins. Pete had 1. And they were going into South Carolina. Black voters never warmed up to Kamala. They certainly weren't going to warm up to Mayor Pete. And the Democratic Party was scared to death that an 80-year-old socialist was going to be the nominee. So they looked at the only horse that was left who had an opportunity to beat Bernie, and they put all of their chips on him.
Yeah, well, I agree with everything you just said. I think that's true, that the banks and everybody in the system looked and said, Bernie's crazy, we can't have this. Who else you got? Well, we got this old geezer guy, okay, fine, stick him in there. Well, that's true, and he'll be a figurehead, which he was, and the party operatives are going to run the White House. So that's precisely what happened, and I don't care what Joe Biden's attorney says, that he signed all this legislation himself, and they didn't use the auto pen on anything. That's baloney. I understand that's what they did. They installed this guy. It was really the party installing the person they wanted to. By the way, the same way they attempted to do it with Kamala Harris 4 years later. The party mucky mucks knew exactly who they wanted to install, and that's what they did, except it didn't work this time. It's weird. And I was going to say this to you. I thought Biden's campaign was horrible. I don't even care if all the Democratic people and the money were behind it. The fact that he apparently got 85 million votes blows me away. And what blows me away even more is that you kicked Trump out, ceremoniously out of the White House. He's lost. He's disgraced. He's, wounded and all that. And what's even weirder is that he turns around 4 years later and gets reelected. That's incredible. I mean, that's wild.
Well, I got to tell you, it's got to be frustrating if you look at this from the point of view of Joe Biden, because that guy has wanted to be president for a very long time. He got elected to the Senate, I think, in his 20s, and he ran for the presidency and lost a few different times in between actually winning it. But he only got the presidency after he was beyond his best-by date. It's like when you go to one of these sad casinos out in the middle of nowhere, one of these Indian casinos in, the middle of a forest somewhere, and you look at the pictures of the people on the wall who hit the jackpot, and it's always someone who's 94 years old on 2 different oxygen tanks, and they look like they're about ready to roll a 7 right then and there. And that's when they get to be a millionaire. That's the stage in life when they can start blowing their nose with $100 bills. It's got to be frustrating.
Yeah, you're damn right it does, because you're only young once and you didn't get a chance to have it. The first time Biden was, I think, chased out of the race, too, it was all about character. It was all those guys back in the day like Sam Donaldson at ABC and all those guys that they chased him out of the race because he lied. They caught him lying about his speeches and lying about law school and lying about all kinds of stuff. And that was back in the day when the media would call him out and throw him out. And that was a number of years ago. He's run, of course, as you just mentioned, a number of times in the meantime. But the funny thing about it was that back in the day, there were actually people that would call him out. And what was interesting to me is over these 30 or 40 years, he didn't change at all. He's still the same guy, and yet this time, nobody was going to call him out.
Joe Crummey, host of the Evil Thoughts podcast. You can download that wherever you download your favorite podcasts. Joe Crummey, thanks so much for stopping by. Have a great weekend.
My pleasure, John. You too. Thank you.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, now that we've hit the halfway point of today's show, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You could do what George Gascon likes to do to himself in the middle of the night.
Do a Google on YouTube.
You can get the KABC app. You can get the KSFO app. There are so many different ways to listen live to these radio stations and download all the podcasts. You can listen to these podcasts no matter what you're doing, whether you're working, you're exercising, you're driving in the car. Just be careful in case you don't realize that you're right now in the middle of a high-speed chase and someone is trying to get around you.
Get out of my way.
And right now it's time to reopen the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And Randy, it's Friday. A lot of people are trying to get out of town, and there is road rage going on all over the place, and today it's made the blotter.
Twice in Orange County in the span of 24 hours. Let's start with the one in Irvine. By the way, this is how little Irvine PD has to do. This wasn't even reported to the police. It was just a social media video, and Irvine PD is like, we're going to find that guy. Here is NBC4 with a apparently hate crime road rage incident.
We begin tonight with what police are calling a road rage hate crime in Irvine, and it was all captured on video. Good evening, everyone. I'm Carolyn Johnson. Police actually saw that video on social media and began an investigation. NBC4's Darsha Phillips is live in the newsroom now with a story that's new at 11. And Darsha, this one ended with an arrest.
Well, it's Orange County.
That's the only place in Southern California where that happens.
Yeah, Carolyn, it definitely did. Irvine police saying their message is clear. They will not tolerate hate and they will not tolerate crime. The victim in this did not go to police but posted the video on social media. And when Irvine police saw that it took place in their city, they took action.
See, how hard is this, LAPD? They have officers scouring social media to figure out what crimes are going on. Like, I don't know, street takeovers.
Now, Randy, I have a theory. When we said that we were going to do a road rage story in Irvine, I wonder how many people out there thought to themselves, I wonder if it's a minivan, and I wonder if it's Katie Porter.
Paul!
You think she's honked a little when someone cuts her off?
Oh, can you imagine the mouth on her?
Little D.
A road rage hate crime caught on camera. This incident posted on social media got the attention of Irvine police.
This man was very angry, was swerving his vehicle towards the victim, allegedly, almost made them cause a collision. And then after...
I feel like everyone is so frustrated by the traffic in Southern California. We all feel like at any moment we can snap. And maybe you do for like a second, and you honk for like 2 seconds instead of 1 second. Or you think you're going to start tailgating them. You think you're going to start following them. Snap out of it.
How much of a trigger finger do you have with the horn?
I used to be afraid to honk it because I'm assuming that everyone in L.A. is packing and they'll shoot me. But yesterday I got cut off by a big wheeler. I got cut off by a truck. I'm like, if you don't see me, you're going to kill me. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Driving in L.A. is the worst thing in the world, and all I want to do is move.
And then after yelling racial slurs, threw a hot cup of coffee into the person's vehicle.
Oh, wow. That escalated.
That's aggressive.
This is why don't be cheap. Use the air conditioning. Never have your windows rolled down.
I don't think I've driven around town with my windows down the entire time I've owned this car.
Vehicle.
This happened on Tuesday near Sand Canyon and the 5 freeway in Irvine. The victim capturing it on his cell phone. Police say the man in the white van is 54-year-old Robert Tackett of Irvine. After seeing the post on social media, Irvine police reached out to the victim and then tracked down the suspect using his license plate.
Now that's proactive policing.
There you go. Irvine frequently voted the safest big city in America.
Those police don't have much to do these days. I mean, maybe they have to go save someone if the Ferris wheel at the Spectrum gets stuck.
Well, all those domestic violence calls over at Katie Porter's house.
Well, there is that.
Hey, hello, everybody.
I didn't even think about the fact when I downloaded this story that you were going to turn this into nothing but Katie Porter jokes.
Well, I'll tell you, it's the first thing that popped into my head as soon as I saw it on the list.
People like to associate Irvine with clean streets. Maybe it's UCI. Maybe it's the Spectrum. Nope. First thing you associate Irvine, it's KP.
You got that right.
We wanted to make sure we got it right. We wanted to fully investigate this incident. We wanted to talk to the victim, understand what occurred from their perspective, put together a really solid case so that we could go and arrest him today.
CHP arrested Tackett Thursday in Northern California.
Hate is not acceptable in Irvine.
Boy, that's a long way.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hate is not acceptable in Irvine and is not going to be tolerated. The message is clear. If you come to Irvine and commit a crime, we are going to find you and we are going to arrest you.
Tackett, police say, was arrested for hate crime and aggravated assault. Live in the newsroom tonight, I'm Darcia Phillips, NBC4 News.
It would have been regular assault, but with a hot coffee, it's aggravated.
Well, and you notice they didn't say we're going to fine you and there's going to be accountability. We're going to fine you and we're going to arrest you. That's the way it works.
So, Johnny, that's what happened in Irvine. But if you go a little up the 5, there was also an incident in Fullerton regarding road rage where somebody intentionally tried to run over a bicyclist.
Now, I can say this. There are a lot of very angry motorists in Fullerton, primarily because of the parking situation at Cal State Fullerton.
Go Titans. Here is Fox 11.
Now to a story you see only here on Fox 11. A disturbing case of road rage in Fullerton leaves a young man injured after an intentional hit and run.
Wow. Fox 11's Gina Silva live in Fullerton with his mother's emotional plea for justice and the vital clues police are using to find that driver. Gina.
That's right. It happened in broad daylight at a very busy intersection here in Fullerton. There were plenty of witnesses, and it was all captured on camera. Now, we have to warn you, the video may be difficult to watch.
It's radio, so you'll be fine.
As a mom, my heart just dropped.
Lori Costello's son, Jesse, is battered and struggling to walk after becoming the victim of what looks like an intentional hit and run.
It was totally 100% intentional just because of the way the guy came after him once and then turned around and came after him a second time.
He made a second pass?
If that wasn't intentional, this guy has to be the world's worst driver. Worse than Caitlyn Jenner and Laura Bush.
It happened Monday around 1:30 p.m. at Harbor and Orangethorpe in Fullerton. Lori says her son was biking home when a man in a red car stopped to flirt with a woman at the light.
Gross.
Hey, Daddy, how'd you meet Mommy? Well, if the light wasn't red, you wouldn't be here.
When the light turned green and he didn't move, her son tapped the bumper. And that's when she says the driver snapped.
Okay, no. No, there is no defense. You're holding up traffic because you're trying to hit on somebody. It's obviously not working. So the guy behind you taps your bumper with a bicycle, and then you decide you need to run him over?
Yeah, that is narcissistic behavior to the nth degree.
He got upset and did a burnout and took off. And
this is my fear. My fear is so many drivers are one incident away from completely snapping.
Well, and if you're on a bicycle, you have no fighting chance at all.
Well, this is why I don't care how many bollards they put up. The idea of having motorists share the road with bicyclists will always be dangerous because people who drive can lose their minds very quickly. The loudest I have ever screamed has been on the 405 freeway.
And even with cars, if you look at what causes accidents on the freeway, it's speed differential. When you have one car going 55 miles an hour and one car going 80 miles an hour, that's dangerous, particularly when people are changing lanes and those sorts of things. When you have automobiles that are going very fast and you have bicycles that are not going very fast, that is a recipe for disaster, especially when they have nothing protecting them if they get hit.
And turned around, and my son was crossing the street when the guy came and tried to hit him from behind first.
Jesse managed to get out of the way and thought it was over until the driver came back.
This is like a horror movie.
Yeah, no kidding.
The guy turned around in his vehicle and came on the wrong side of the road and hit my son head on.
Despite being hit head on and thrown from his bike, Jesse avoided major injuries.
All of this because he interrupted this guy hitting on somebody.
I'll tell you, that guy should be the one in Las Vegas and not me. If he has that kind of luck, you can get hit head on by a car if you're on a bicycle and you can survive with minor injuries. It's time for you to go play the roulette wheel.
He's dealing with bruised ribs and a swollen knee from slamming into the side of the car.
So the car is going to have some front end damage on it.
If you see a red car driving around Fullerton with the indentation of a bicycle on the hood, you know who to look for.
Well, the indentation of a bicycle and a bicyclist, and probably some blood still on the grill.
But we just want to try to find this guy.
The car is described as a red two-door vehicle, possibly a Dodge Challenger.
I'm hoping to get this guy caught. I don't want it to happen to somebody else and somebody else get hurt even worse. I want justice for my son.
The local police department is actively investigating this case. Detectives are looking at surveillance footage, hoping that one of the cameras captured the license plate number. If you have any information, contact the Fullerton Police Department.
So there you go. There's the case of insane road rage in Fullerton.
Well, we need to catch this guy and we need to put him in jail because the last thing we need is him killing Lance Armstrong. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Let's go to John in L.A. John, hello.
Hi. John?
Yes, sir.
Hi, thanks for taking the call. I appreciate your show. Really love the show. I talked to your screener, and there's two comments I wanted to make. One, real quickly, about the Fullerton bike accident. I'm kind of with Randy. You know, it's like you don't know what's going to trigger someone. You're on a bike. You know, you're not in a car. Just go around the guy. I've driven bike, you know, all through L.A. when I used to go to work down there, and did all kinds of illegal things on a bike. It's like, why don't you just go around the guy? But that's another point. What I would like to ask you is, you made a comment earlier in the broadcast that at some point the voters are going to have to be held responsible for the people that are in office. And, you know, like some of these Democratic socialists on, you know, the city commission, that kind of thing. And I wonder if you could kind of elaborate or stress, you know, what is it? Because all of us agree these people are inept and they have a different agenda, but yet they're voted into office. Is it a lack of voter turnout? Is it just a displaced kind of complacency in the voters, specifically in California, but even in the nation? That how are these people getting into office per se, and your outlook on that? Like, at what point do we have to talk about the elephant in the room and say, hey, voter, what are you doing, or what are you not doing? I'd just like to hear you reflect on that.
I think it's a combination of a couple of different things, and I can specifically talk about California because that's where I live and that's what I know about.
Yeah.
I think there are basically two factors that are leading us to where we are going and where we are right now. One is just the evolution of technology has changed the amount of information that's in front of people. Go back to the 1980s, the 1970s, even the 1990s, and you look at how many people, let's just say, subscribe to the newspaper, where the newspaper was in their driveway every day, and the newspaper, and many newspapers in California were quite slanted politically back at that time, but take that out of it for a second. They still covered what was going on in the community. They covered what was going on at the city council level, the state legislative level, the county level, the school boards, those sorts of things. And then we had the community newspapers, the non-LA Times papers that covered what was going on specifically in your area. Even people who weren't news junkies back then, many of them subscribed to the paper because that's how you found out what time the movies started. That's how you found out what the weather was going to be. That's how you found out where the stock market was the day before, or what the scores were in the NBA or Major League Baseball. And so because you wanted that information, you had exposure to the other stuff. So if your city council was failing, you were aware of it. You may not know all the details, but you were aware of it. And now that technology has changed how people get their information, and it's also changed other things. I mean, go back to when I first started in radio, many of the FM stations had news departments, and even if you listened to a music-based morning show, you still got headlines. You still got news. You were still aware of what was going on in your community. And a lot of that is gone just due to changing patterns on how people receive their information and receive their entertainment. The other thing is that technology has also changed how we see ourselves. We see ourselves as people of the world now. People don't see themselves as Angelinos or San Franciscans or Californians or whatever. They see themselves as people of the world. And when that happens, it's very easy to nationalize all politics. So then you go and you look when you're trying to evaluate candidates for water board or school board or city council, whether you like Trump or hate Trump. If they hate Trump and you hate Trump, then that's a qualification. Whether they know anything about water when you're voting for them for water board is not relevant to you. So the criteria that you judge them on is something that's totally unrelated to that office. You end up with a completely ignorant electorate, and you end up with voters who fundamentally don't evaluate the candidates based on their competency regarding that office. All right. Thank you for the call, sir. We've got one more hour coming up on the John Phillips Show. Don't you go anywhere.